Hello and welcome to Master Integrator. Before we kick off, a quick thank you to all of our sponsors. This episode of the show is brought to you by ADI Global, formerly Snap One, your trusted one-stop partner for professional integration. ADI Global brings together exclusive powerhouse brands like Control4, Arachnus, Luma, Binary, Strong, and Wirebath, alongside a carefully curated range of distributed brands, all under one roof. With integrator-first support from design through installation and long after handover, ADI Global is focused on helping you deliver smarter, more reliable projects, because when you win, they win. To learn more, reach out to the team on 1800 990 548. ADI Global, powering the smartest installations. Are you looking for serious design support behind your next project? Meet Colosseum. Built for integrators, Colosseum is a white-label design and documentation partner specialising in cinema and media room design, lighting control, and automation engineering. And with their new Spark program, you can unlock Colosseum-designed cinemas at nearly half price when your vendor is Spark-enabled. So that is lower upfront costs, immersive 3D walkthroughs, and faster sales. Colosseum. It really is the design and documentation wingman that you didn't know you needed. And finally, right now, I'm working with a research team at the University of the Sunshine Coast that's exploring how smart home technology can better support people with disabilities. But to get it right, they need input from you, the integrators actually doing the work. If you've got time to spare for a conversation, it could make a big difference. The link to get involved is in the show notes, so please check it out, and thanks in advance. Hello and welcome to Master Integrator, the podcast that explores the people, ideas, and decisions shaping the future of the systems integration industry. I'm your host, Paul Skelton. Before we get into today's conversation, a quick thank you to the partners who support Master Integrator and the wider industry: ADI Global, Amber Technology, Colosseum, Connected Magazine, and CEDIA. Now, leadership roles in our industry often come with polished bios and carefully worded announcements. But behind every title is a long, messy journey. One shaped by uncertainty, imposter syndrome, hard decisions, and a lot of unpaid volunteer hours. Today's guest doesn't shy away from that reality. My guest is a very good friend of mine, Amanda Wildman, the owner of True Media in Michigan. She's a working integrator, a long-term CEDIA volunteer, and as of January, the current chair of CEDIA's global board. In this conversation, Amanda shares how she entered the industry later than most, the confidence she had to build from scratch, the moments where she questioned whether she belonged, and why education and volunteers sit at the very centre of her vision for CEDIA's future. This isn't a conversation about governance for governance's sake. That's not really in her nature. It's about service, responsibility, and what it means to give back to an industry that shaped your life. This is Master Integrator. Here's Amanda Wildman. Welcome to the show. And also, congratulations, obviously, for the recent announcement. You are the new chairperson of CEDIA's global board. So that's a massive achievement.
17 days in.
17 days in. You kicking goals already.
Yes.
Look, and the people that obviously we both know over here, there's a lot of excitement about you being in this position, and I'm a massive supporter of what you're doing. What has it meant to you personally to actually get into this position now? Because I know it's been a journey.
It has. No, thank you for recognizing that. It definitely has been a journey. I would be remiss if I said, that it hasn't been a journey that I haven't needed so many people to thank along the way. When I first came into this industry, I know we're going to talk a little bit about my history, but I came into this industry as probably an older adult, I will say, and I've gotten to be an even older adult. But I didn't really know the industry very well. And then, of course, the challenge of being a woman in the industry, not knowing the industry really well. I really relied on a lot of people to kind of help me to help form and fashion my foundation and my knowledge. And so getting to this position to me is my thank you back to the industry. And I hope that at the end of the 2 years, I joke about it and I say, 2 years feels very long, but then at the same time, I also know it's going to be very quick. My hope is that this 2 years will be my thank you letter to like the industry and to the people that have poured into me. And that's kind of like the lens that I look at it through. I want to do them right? I want to do, bring, honor to the position. I want to bring recognition to the position. I want to, showcase and help put a spotlight on the people that have helped me along the way, because there have been so many people. And so I hope that when I look back at the end of the 2 years, that people will see that I really kind of poured my heart into it, and that this was my thank you back to them for pouring so much into me.
Now, there's a lot that I want to talk to you about in this episode. So before we get to that, though, let's go right back to the beginning, because there are people who are listening to this that might not be familiar with you. So tell us a bit about where you're from, how you got into the industry, and kind of how you got to this position now.
So should we start at like the traditional AA meeting or something? Like, hi, my name is Amanda Wildman. I'm the owner of True Media, and I have a CEDIA problem. No, I'm just joking. It's not a CEDIA problem, but I've definitely drank the Kool-Aid. I'm an integrator, as you said, out of the United States. I'm in Michigan, which, for those of you who do not know where Michigan is on the globe, we're the easiest state to find, because we're the one that's shaped like the mitten. So I'm always the idiot every time that holds up my hand, and I will point to you on my hand where I'm from. So it's the easiest state to identify in the United States. It has all the lakes around it, and it looks like a mitten. So that being said, right now it is also the frozen tundra. Before we started this podcast, we were just talking a little bit about weather. And so just so you guys know, I am joining you from this last week. We were minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think you did the conversion for me, Paul.
It's about minus 30 Celsius.
Yeah, so you got to have a little bit of toughness to be able to survive that. And I'm very cognizant of all of my technicians. And when I have the opportunity to be out in the field in the winter, it's not for the weak. I spend, in my business, I wear a lot of different hats. I'm the owner of the company. Sometimes that means being janitorial for the day. Sometimes that means that I'm the salesperson. Sometimes it means I get hollered at if something's not working right. But I truthfully have a heart for spending as much time as I can out in the field. So I spend probably, nowadays it's less. It used to be probably about 80% of my time out in the field. I'm now down to probably about 60% of my time out in the field. But I do all of the things. I pull the wire, I dress out our racks, I do some of the design and schematics. We're a small family-owned business, so we are less than 7 employees. And so when you have that few, again, you wear a lot of different hats. And I always just kind of say I try really hard not to fight my husband for the same hat. So I think that's how you make husband-wife businesses work, is that we try to wear different hats at different times. But I came into the industry, I think my husband was just saying the other day, our first membership for CEDIA was in 2013. And when I came in, like I said, I didn't know much about this industry. But I did know that I had a heart for learning. And so I literally, every time I went to Expo, every time I could go to a tech summit, I would buy like the all access pass, right, for education. And I swear I hardly saw the show floor, because I would literally just go to classes as much as I possibly could, because I was determined to drink as quickly as I could from the fire hose. And I already felt like I was a decade behind, because I don't think I really got into this. Gosh, how old was I? I had to be in my 30s almost. I was old. Oh my gosh, I'm even older now. This is terrible. But so you feel like that sense of urgency, and so you're trying to like learn as much as you can as quickly as possible. And so many people like poured into me. I mean, Rich Green, Peter Aylett, they're some of like my hugest mentors. My first mentor was Frank White. So I don't know if anybody still knows him, like from around the block. I mean, he was the first one that I was just like, he was like, you're going to do something, Amanda. And that was way back in 2013. And he's like, you're just sassy enough. You're going to do something. So a lot of it is his fault. And I got to know a lot of the people first, I think, in the US. So then one of my expos, a couple of years in, I want to say, I think it was 2016. So like 3 years in, Jamie Briesmeister, a good friend of mine, she's an integrator here in the United States as well. I served with her on the board. She and I both were involved in the Professional Development Advisory Council, and she and Patrick Hartman, a good friend of mine and a mentor as well, were recognized with a CEDIA Volunteer of the Year award. And I will never forget being at that ceremony. And that was the first time that I had seen like a woman up there getting that award. And I remember kind of like nudging my husband. And I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And so, I owe a lot, to her as well. She and I became, good friends. And we've kind of had a lot of parallel, like pathways. We've shared stuff and ideas back and forth. And I'm so blessed and so lucky to have had so many amazing people that have come into my life in this industry and kind of helped to grow and pour into me and to develop. Because, by the grace of God, I'm not here by myself. I'm here because so many other people helped support me to be able to get me here. So I guess that's a little bit my journey.
And see, this is why I personally think it's a great thing for you to be the chair, because you are so, I guess, representative of the typical CEDIA member in that you are a small business operator. You're, it's a family-run company. You're not in a capital city. And I think that is why it's so great to see you at the top of the board, because all of a sudden, a lot more people are going to see themselves represented in the board and see themselves having this pathway like you saw having a pathway to being involved. And I think that's a great thing for the industry as a whole globally.
Yeah, I hope that that's, true. And I hope that people feel like, that they can, at the end, I'm sure I can give you my email or whatever to anybody that wants to reach out. And I hope that people feel comfortable and realize like, I'm just like them. Like, I don't have a big corporate job. Like, I went through the same panic that a lot of other business owners went through when COVID happened of like, how's the government going to respond? How's the payroll going to work out? What do we do with jobs? How do we deem ourselves essential? All the challenges that I think, an everyday integrator faces, like I face those things. It's different. We have a lot of really, really great manufacturers and we've got a lot of great companies out there, but there's a difference between being part of that and then being cut from the cloth of an integrator. There's just a different feel to it. There's I was telling someone the other day, I said, like the buck stops with us. Like we don't, there's no backup plan, right? Like when you own a company, like there's no backup, that it's do or die. Sometimes, it's putting your whole family and putting everything, on the line when you're a small business owner. And, sometimes trying to figure out how you're going to juggle. You might have done everything perfect and great with a job, but a builder goes out of business or something like that and they can't pay your bill or they're behind in paying. And how do you survive as a business? You're not getting a regular steady paycheck, like from a manufacturer. And, that brings on different stressors and, different challenges. I'd be curious, we should probably, in one of our surveys do a life expectancy. I think being an integrator probably shaves a couple years of your life expectancy off of your life. But it's also extremely rewarding. Every integrator out there knows like how it feels when you get that first really, really big job or, when you're done with it and you can sit back and you can be like, I did that. Like we created something, like we made someone's life better or we did something really, really cool and, we get to show it off. So like, I'm very excited to kind of like represent that because I don't know that we've necessarily had that in the chair position in the boardroom in a minute. And so I think that it's good to kind of have that perspective brought back in for sure.
So you mentioned there that obviously you kind of came into the industry a little bit later than most people. So yep. I'm interested, what were you doing before and how did you first get exposed to the industry? And is technology something you've always wanted to be working with?
It's a question that I commonly get asked, and it's funny because, if you would have seen me in school, I hated math. I loved science, but I hated math. And but what was interesting is now when I look back, on my whole journey, I was a really happy kid if you sat me down with like a pad of like graph paper. Is that how you guys call it? Like the graph paper with all the little squares on it, right? And so had my parents like maybe had exposure to it, they probably would have gotten me into something like architecture, because I was always like drawing out like house plans and layouts and, you know, where would the closets be and where would the doors be and, you know, things like that. But my family, like that just never kind of like was in the thought process. And when I was 16, I got my very first job working in the jewelry industry. And I loved it. And I loved everything about like jewelry, and it was more about the cut and more about the work and stuff behind it. So all the facets and all the shapes and all the angles and really all of the math, which I hated again in school. But when I could see it in real life, and I could just like look at something and I could like tell the proportions right away. And if something was a good cut or not a good cut, it just really stuck with me. And I could see, you know, when you're working in jewelry, if you're doing your job properly, you're with someone for their whole life cycle, right? You see them when they're dating and they're buying some jewelry, and, you know, you see them when they get engaged and you get to hear about all the proposal, and then when they have their first child, and, you know, all of these like life moments. And I had the opportunity to experience that with people, which is my passion. I love connecting people. I love working with people, and I love being around people. And my husband at the time, when we first met, he was working at a cell phone company of all places. And this is right when in the United States, small dishes were starting to become popular. And he was starting to build a small dish business for the cell phone company he worked for. And I was like, this is kind of dumb. You're building their whole business. Like, he was doing all the sales, all the installs, all the ordering, all of the everything. And I said, I had a good job. And I said, why don't you take a year and you do that for yourself as an independent business owner and just reinvest your money, and I can take care of, you know, like the bills and stuff. And so we did that. And as any small business owner will know, clients don't want you in their house while they're at work. They want you in their house doing that kind of stuff when they get home from work and they're home for the evening. So if we ever wanted to have a date night or anything like that, it got to a point where I started going along with him on jobs, because my job was done for the day. And if we wanted to go out to dinner, I had to help him move the job along and get it done quicker. So I learned, and he taught me, like, I do not do roofs. That's the one thing I do not do. You will not find me on a ladder. I will be your ground-bound gopher. That's what I say all the time, which sounds crazy, because how am I doing electrical and wiring? I just make my guys do the ladder, but I will do all of the groundwork stuff. So when they don't want to do the sockets and the outlets on the ground, that is my deal. But I let them do the high stuff. And it just kind of started from there, and our business grew, and we saw satellite was kind of phasing out when Netflix was coming around, and the decision was made, you know, either we run our business out till it dies, we sell our business or try to sell our business, or we adapt and we change. And so the next logical thing was, a lot of people were starting to like install TVs and, you know, mount TVs on a wall. And so I was like, I'll never forget, I told my husband, I was like, in the States, I don't know exactly what the conversion rate is over there, but like, I was like, if we could get a job that we got paid $10,000 for, like, that would be it. Like, I would have been at the pinnacle. Like, I was going to be so excited. We could just retire. Like, that was going to be great. And then now I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even want to get out of bed for that, which is terrible. But, but you know how it is, like, when you're first kind of like building that up. And I still remember the day and how I felt like the first time that someone trusted us to like wire their whole house, and someone trusted us to, you know, do like an entire job. And as with any small business owner, I mean, you look back now on some of your first jobs and you're like, oh my gosh, I should go back and I should like redo everything, because I didn't know what I didn't know, you know, at the time. But it's kind of cool to see the evolution and to see the change and see where technology is going, and to know that like we're working with people that are entrusting us with what will inevitably like be their largest asset that they ever own in their lives, is usually their house. And they trust us to like help them do something either really cool or make their life better in that space. So yeah, it's kind of a cool, rewarding job.
Is there anything that you know now that you kind of wish you knew back then when you were first going on those, let's call them, instead of date nights, but date sites?
Yeah, date sites. There you go. That's a good one. I wish that I would have had the confidence that I have now. I will say I think that was one of my biggest challenges of coming in, and like I really felt like the imposter syndrome when I first started, like where I'm from and where I'm sure a lot of people are, like being, like I said, a woman in the industry. You didn't see a lot of women working with tools, knowing what the tools were, what was the right tool, things like that. And so a lot of times I lacked the confidence. And even sometimes like I regret not asking the questions, right? Because like I would have a question that would come into the back of my mind and I wouldn't ask it for fear of like being called out. And the longer now that I'm in the industry, the more I've realized like the only dumb question is the one that you don't ask, number one. Number two, this industry is so cool and so unique in the fact that like people genuinely want to help you. And I've never had anybody make me feel dumb for asking a question. It was more what I kind of like put on myself. And when people see me now, like they laugh and they're like, there's no way you were never not confident, Amanda. Like we can't even get you to shut up is usually what the sentiment is. But I promise when I first came in and, you know, even before I came into the industry, I really was shy. I really was kind of like timid. And I wish that I would have had that confidence faster because I think that I would have propelled even faster. But I am where I am now. And I'm, you know, like I said, I'm super thankful and I'm super humbled to be, you know, in the spot where I'm at now.
So would you say that that's probably been the biggest challenge that you've faced being a woman in this industry is it's more kind of putting the insecurities onto yourself? Or I guess, have there been instances where you've run into an issue that, you know, maybe some of the men in the industry haven't even realized was a problem or been dismissive of it because it didn't occur to them?
So there's two things that I will share that like they just tick me off, and I share this with a lot of people. But okay, I'm not by trait. I'm not a network girl, right? Like the numbers and the all of that, like. I just, my brain doesn't work that way, right? Networking is not what I do in our business. I can organize wires all day long. I'm great at labeling. I can make stuff look beautiful. I can do everything else. Networking is not my thing. I will remember when I first came in, I was like, guys would have a tendency, like they would rattle off IP addresses, right? I'd ever go to a networking class and they'd rattle off IP addresses. And I didn't understand how it worked, but I was too scared to ask. So I would sit there and I would try to catch the numbers. Well, you only catch the last couple numbers. And the last couple numbers, when you're rattling off an IP address, right, they're always all different. And I will never forget, I was like, I can't be this dumb. I cannot be this dumb that I don't get it, right? And so I was really struggling, right, with all of that kind of thing. And I remember thinking back and I was like, look, I worked in jewelry. I know there's not a man out there that generally remembers exactly their wife's birthday, their anniversary date, everything like that all of the time, that they can just like rattle it off at the drop of a hat. So there's something going on that I'm just missing the missing link to. I'm not dumb. I just haven't figured out the clue. And I took Jeff Mead's networking class, and I did one of the ones online because I was too timid to go do it in person because I didn't want to, you know, show that I felt like an idiot. And I remember him in there and explaining all the different octets and how the first ones are generally the same and just the last ones are different, right? And I remember pausing my laptop. I almost threw it across the room and I cussed like a sailor because I was so pissed off that like someone could have just filled me in and I could have been part of the conversation. And like now looking back, like I just think like, okay, that's just like the dumbest thing. And the guys probably just didn't even realize that they were doing it because they all knew. But I just felt like it was a secret language that I just didn't know. And so when I figured it out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not an idiot. I had to have the code to understand it. And so that's made things a lot better. And I think that was one of my stepping points. So thank goodness for like Jeff. Thank goodness for like CEDIA having the online courses so that like you can do them at your own pace and not feel like an idiot. because that was hugely helpful, for me in that. And then the other one that I would say is when I first came on the board, one of the interview questions, they would set up board members, part of the governance committee, they would have them ask you different questions. And I'll never forget Rob Sutherland, who was the first chairperson that I was under when I was on the board. He asked me a question, what do I wish as a woman that men knew, like on job sites, because he knew I was a technician out there. And I said to him, and I teach this to all my technicians, is when you work with a female client and you're walking around the house, and let's say you get into a room or you get into a space, like you're in the master bedroom, you're going to install a TV on the wall. A lot of times guys will walk in and they aren't aware necessarily of their surroundings, and they know they're just in there to like talk to her about the TV that you're going to mount on the wall, and they don't think about it. But I said, as a woman, I said, it's very important to me to know where you're standing as a male technician. You could be the best guy in the entire world, but if you're standing between me and the exit door to get out, there is a small piece of my head as a female homeowner that is saying, what happens if this guy isn't a good guy? What happens if something is worst case scenario? Who's going to find me? What goes on? How do I get out of this space? And so just as a male technician, moving in like 3 feet from the door and making sure that that female client has, open access or easy access to like an exit, and that you aren't too close, like following behind her to make her feel uncomfortable. Because you don't always know, like sometimes women have dealt with, traumatic situations or traumatic events, and it might not occur to, to the guys. And like I said, I would leave any one of my male technicians with any one of my kids, with my grandma, with anybody. They're the best guys in the whole wide world, but you don't know what trauma potentially that someone has that you don't know about. And so trying to set up the best environment. And I had Rob actually, like he was like, I never would have thought of that. And he goes, I share that now with my guys. And he really thanked me for that. And that's where I think, having female perspectives and being able to explain our side of the story, a lot of guys that I tell that to, they're like, well, I never would have thought of that, because it doesn't cross your mind that you would ever do something like that because you're a good guy, but it distracts that person from listening to you. And so I just think we need to share those stories that, we do have differences, and how can we make the entire environment better, no matter what. So, yes.
Connected Magazine is your go-to publication for the commercial and residential AV and smart home industry. So how do you stop clients expecting a Hollywood-level home theatre for the price of a big TV and a couple of speakers? In the latest edition, Anthony Grimani looks at a smarter way to budget and sell high-performance cinemas. Instead of leading with gear lists, he shifts the conversation to real estate value, including why pricing by square metre, like every other trade on a build, can set expectations early and make approvals far easier. You'll find that article and plenty more in the latest edition of Connected and online. Links are in this episode's description.
The 2026 CEDIA Awards are now open. And if you've delivered a project you're proud of, now is the time to enter. Join last year's winners, like Denote, Wavetrain Cinemas, Cater, and Luxor Integration. Flagship categories include Best Integrated Home and Best Home Cinema, alongside specialist awards like Best Assisted Living Project, Best Outdoor Space, and Technology Beyond the Home. We've made it even easier than ever to submit, but entries close on the 24th of April. Head to cedia.awardsplatform.com to get started.
So I guess with that in mind, I mean, how do you actually go about changing that mindset? Because a lot of guys in there have been doing it for a long time. They immediately would sit there and go, I take offense to that because I would never do that. They'd think about from their own perspective, not the perspective of their potential client. So how is it, again, what is an effective way to actually get that message across to them to actually realise that we're not having to dig at you, we're just making sure you're aware of what's happening?
I think I've changed a lot of my philosophy in that, in the fact that I used to get a little bit miffed. Like when people would ask me questions, or when people would, same kind of thing. Like, I mean, I can't tell you when I first started how many times people would ask me if I needed to check with my husband on how to do it, because they didn't know if I knew how to do it. Do I need to double check with him? Or I did have someone ask me if something was going to blow up because I was the one that worked on it, and like they were serious, kind of a thing. And I think, I used to get very, very upset, and I would get really agitated, and I would get like really kind of like mean back. And then I kind of have decided to just address it with humor. So like when I tell and I share that story, with guys, I don't ever attack them, or say anything about that. I try to leave it more as like an anecdotal, like, hey, this funny thing happened, or, would you imagine, it is just kind of a little unnerving, and maybe that's just me and my insecurities, but I'm just trying to get them to think about it. And that person that asked me if it was going to blow up, I think my cheeky response, to them was, I said, no, I set it up to self-destruct after your check clears. Kind of a thing. So that, you kind of have to answer it with humor, or, if they ask you if you know what it is that you're doing, kind of thing. That's my favorite one. When people ask me if I know what I'm doing, I'll walk in with whatever tool, that I have, and I'll be like, nope, I have no clue, but wish me luck. And I like storm right past them in their house, and you can just kind of like see their response of like, should I go check on her, or, what's going on? So I think that as often as you can deal with it with humor, people are going to get upset. Sometimes people are just going to get upset about what you say. But I think if you're coming at it from an authentic place, and you want them to be successful, like no guy that I've ever told that story to has ever felt like, I'm attacking them. I'm just like, hey, just FYI, this is just something that's important to me, and I use it with my team, and it's important to my team. And I think if you come from a place of like, I just want you to, be aware, and, to maybe take something into consideration that might help you along the way. If you come from a good place and wanting someone genuinely to like be better, most people don't take offense. And so I just think every time I make a decision, I really try to filter it, through, I'm a person of faith, myself. And so I always say when I make a decision, I pray about my decisions. I say when I make a decision, is it something that I'd be proud to have my kids look at, that I made that decision? And, am I trying to do it for the best interest of the people, like involved? Because, if you can't say something nice, that's what my mom would say nothing at all. So I think if you try to use those filters, you're not going to be perfect. I'm sure I've probably hurt some people along the way, or people have taken offense, but that's not my heart. I don't try to do that. So yeah, try to have a good heart with it.
So let's look at your new role. I think it's absolutely important to point out, as you have first female to be the chair of the global board for CEDIA, it is important, but by no means the reason you got the job. So a lot of people listening to this probably don't actually even know what the chair of the global board for CEDIA does. Are you able just to explain what your new role actually entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So being the chair means that, I work very, very closely with Daryl. Everyone this year and previous years, we've had most of the board members, but now going forward, every board member will have a specific role or a specific liaison position where they will work with a group of people. And being the chair means I work very closely with Daryl, and I work with the board to help set strategy, help look at where we're going as an association, help set up the goals for Daryl and Daryl's team. A few years ago, we very much made the decision that we are a strategic board. And that means that we don't get into the weeds. Like I don't tell Daryl day to day, like, Daryl, here's your checklist for the day. What are you doing specifically with this? What are you doing specifically with that? We made the decision that, we hired Daryl. Daryl's competent at what Daryl's doing. He does a great job. But what we are is we set the strategy, we set the vision. And When I first came onto the board, John Buchanan actually we always got kind of like a board buddy when you first came on the board. And John Buchanan was my board buddy. And I think that he was really good and really instrumental in helping me to think about the strategy and think about the big picture. Because I think, when you first come on the board, your first thing is like you show up with your notepad of like, here's the 150 things that I want to fix with CEDIA as soon as I walk into that boardroom. And you come with your list and you expect to just start checking off the list. And as an integrator, that's been a difficult thing because, when you're an integrator and you own your own business, I get the opportunity. Like if I don't like something in, our sales pitch process, right? That when we're working with clients, I can go in as a business owner and I can change it like that tomorrow. Like it's done, it's changed. I can hire someone, I can let someone go. I can, change our logo. I can change, our theme or our colors or whatever it might be. And I can do it instantly. And so I think that a lot of times integrators, when we come into that position, we have that mindset of like, here's my laundry list and I'm going to be different than every other board member and I'm going to fix this laundry list. Being a strategic board, we don't do that. We bring in our experience. We are there to be a sounding board for Daryl, but we set the big picture vision and we set that strategy. And then we help Daryl and his team and support them in saying, okay, you guys, this is what we want done. You guys figure out the nuts and bolts about how to be able to get there. And we're going to be a sounding board, or we're going to be a help, and we're going to be a support for you to help you to be able to get there. So we now have like board liaisons. You're going to see that roll out very, very soon, where everyone is going to, all of these different committees have a board liaison. That board liaison is just going to make sure that that group or that committee is staying on strategy. Make sure that we're all kind of like working together in a coherent, goal to move forward with what our vision is. I meet with Daryl twice a month now. So we have a set standing appointment, where twice a month, every other Tuesday, he and I meet. We talk about things that are going on. I'm a sounding board for him. If there are things that need to get brought to the board, if there's things happening in certain areas, that we need to address. I think that's something that, you and I talked about earlier. I want to make sure that, a lot of your initial audience probably is Asia Pac. I know that there are people globally that are hearing your podcast. But I think, a lot of people could say, oh, well, she's, a woman from Michigan, from the United States. She's only going to be thinking about things from the U.S. perspective. And here we're in Australia, totally on the other side of the globe with nice, beautiful weather, nice beaches, which I don't have. And we're, the long lost kids, out here. And, when I first came onto the board, one of the things that actually David Weinstein really challenged me on is he said, I'm going to challenge you to think outside of like your Midwest United States perspective. Like you need to like expand more, globally and get to know more people. And I really took on that challenge that year. And Paul, I mean, that's when I reached out to you and I started kind of getting involved in, some of the workforce development stuff that you guys are doing and, seeing all of the amazing things that you guys are doing with, the insurance companies and, with health and wellness. And you guys have been huge instrumental leaders, in that. Like, it's interesting because like in Australia as a country, if you guys can get something accomplished, sometimes people might think, well, it's inconsequential, right? Because it's a smaller country, we have smaller membership there. But the fact is if we can get something where you guys can be really, really successful there and then use that to showcase other places of the world, it shows a system of where it worked. Because like when you come to the United States, every state is treated so differently. And if we don't have a successful case study to show them, it's very difficult to make change here. And so, I'm so appreciative of David for, challenging me on that. And, that's where I did a couple, classes and stuff in Latin America, got to meet a couple people there and did some stuff, with the apprentice program, in the UK, and really got to know you in Australia and, a couple of your other members, Stuart Robertson and stuff like that. So I think I bring that perspective as well. I'm not just bringing like the Midwest, America, perspective into that chair role. And I think that that's very important for Daryl and for the CEO to see as well. So when he comes to me and asks me, for feedback or for insight, I really try to that's where I try to put on, the different hats and try to put on the different global hats. And I reach out, as often as I can to people in other areas to, hey, give me your perspective. What's, this, I talk to you like, hey, what's going well over there? What's not going well over there? Like, what do I need to know? And, I invite everybody at the end, like I said, they'll have my email and reach out, shoot me an email. Like, I like this. I don't like this, don't forget about this or, stuff like that. I think that that's really important. And hopefully, fingers crossed, someday I have on my wish list, I'm going to come visit all of you guys in Asia Pac, and you might never get rid of me because I will trade the sun and sand for the snow we have over here.
Well, yeah, as you know, and letting people know, there are plans afoot. We are going to get you here, and someday we will find a way.
Someday. But if you do, Paul, you got to put me to work. So get integrators
absolutely.
now. They can send you messages. I want to go out and I want to go be on the tools. I don't want to just like be on the little tour and see the fancy showrooms. Like I want to see the day-to-day work, what actually gets done, because it's really cool. When you get the opportunity, what it is that you're doing over here, but you get to see how somebody else does it. You can learn a lot, and if you have someone explain it to you, people can kind of surface explain it to you. But when you're out there in the field and you do something, you might not even know to like explain what it is that, but you just watch and you're like, hey, wait a minute. Why did you do that? Like, what was that? What tool was that? Let me quick see that. Let me dig through your tool bag a second and see what it is that you have. And, I love that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I think you might regret asking me to put you to work. At last year's Tech Summit, one of our instructors who I had delivered quite a few sessions actually went to my wife and said, Paul's a slave driver. How do I get him to stop? And she just looked at him and said, you got no shot. Absolutely no chance. Nah, not going to happen. So, you've opened yourself up there and I am going to put you to work.
I can't wait. I very much look forward to it. So that will be awesome.
So it's actually kind of funny because I think when we first started talking years ago now, I immediately thought we might be kindred because you have a similar mentality that I have, and the people who know me here know I have, and that's just get shit done.
Yeah.
We talk about things too much. Just get it done.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think sometimes Wendy might have regretted offering me this job to begin with because I don't know if she realised what she was signing up for.
Be prepared. I think that there might be some people that regret, me being in the chair position because I have that kind of same mentality. You're right, and it's just get it done. Let's make stuff happen. Like
that's it. We've spoken about it. Great. What's next?
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
So I'm wondering from a strategy perspective that you've got there with the board. What are some of those things that you just want to get done?
That is a great question. I will tell you the sword that I will die on the next 2 years, first and foremost, is education. My volunteerism has come up directly through education. I mean, my very first, I was on the business working group on the PDAC. I eventually was on the PDAC, Professional Development Advisory Council is what it was called. I eventually got on it. I eventually became the chair of it. And then I got into the boardroom. And when I got into the boardroom, that's when we started certification. So been very involved in certification and things like that. I think that we have some of the most amazing, phenomenal volunteers. I sometimes feel like they might feel a little bit like they're wandering a little bit in the desert, right? We've had a little bit of turnover in that. Like we, have now Evan West, who's going to be great, working with getting our education for CEDIA Expo and things like that. We hired him just before CEDIA Expo, and he's going to be great at that. We have Paul Dolence, hired in as the I'm going to be terrible with titles, so don't crucify me on this, but I think he's Senior VP of Education. I don't know exactly the titles. I apologize. But I think we've got all of the things in place. Now we just need to get the structure. And we need to get that where it's really, really fine-tuned, moving forward. That is my number one, first and foremost goal, and re-energize the volunteers. The one thing that I think CEDIA has that no other group, manufacturer, company, anybody out there has that we have is our volunteers. I mean, we couldn't pay people what they honestly deserve for all of the heart and soul that they put into it. And you can't replace that. When I look at you are on calls at 2 a.m. Who does that? Who gets on calls at 2 a.m. to lend your voice? And James Chen, who's in the boardroom, half the time he's in Australia, half the time he's in, China, whatever. That poor man, I'm lucky. I'm in the Midwest of the United States. I feel like I'm the sandwich person in the middle. Doesn't matter what time you pick. It's almost always a good time for me. So I feel terrible ever complaining, and I look at, James and he's like, it's 2 a.m. I set my alarm and it's 2 a.m. in the morning for me. And I'm like, do you know how lucky we are that we have volunteers that are willing to get on these calls? Stuart Robertson, he's another one. I mean, that poor man, he's been on, I got him involved. I wrangled him in to be involved with PDAC. And I can't tell you how many calls that poor man has been on at 1 o'clock, 3 a.m., midnight, whatever. And how do you thank somebody for that? How do you thank somebody that has that knowledge, that gift, and they're willing to share it with other people? There's no other organization out there that is like that with CEDIA. And so to me, that's my number one. That's my sword that I will die on. I want education to be awesome, and I want volunteers and members to be energized and engaged. I want, when I first came here, I remember thinking, I want to be part of this thing that's bigger and better and cooler than I could ever imagine from my little Midwest home in Michigan. And I want people to feel that. I want people to feel like I'm contributing to something that's going to have lasting impact on the industry. I want to contribute to something that, may make someone a better technician in Australia or in Latin America or, in some other place. And we only get that through our volunteers. And we're so lucky. No one else has the volunteers that we have. No one else has the people willing to give their heart and soul. And yeah.
So I guess from your perspective then, because you have volunteered for so long, and there's a lot of people listening to this who might have thought about it or just haven't thought about it before, how have you actually used volunteering to help your own career and your own business?
I always tell everyone that I have gotten far more out of volunteering than what I put in. And my husband will tell you, he jokes all the time. He says, I'm a professional volunteer for CEDIA. So I'm sure that, there's been times and he's like, you got to rein it in. You got to reel it in a little bit. But you know how cool, I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, do you know how cool it is to be able to say, if I don't have the answer within probably 3 phone calls, I can either get to the person that invented it or created it or whatever. Our industry's still young enough, right? That you get to be around those people that invented that or created that or made that technology work. And I always tell my kids, my daughter didn't get it until I think it was 2 years ago at ISE of all things. And I went out, was out at dinner with a group of my friends and she went there. And I always tell, my kids and my husband, I was like, if I could have hung out with Nikolai Tesla or, Einstein or things like that, and I would have paid them to be able to hang out with them. And our industry is still young enough that we have some of the most amazing people in this industry that have built this industry, it's been built upon their backs. And not only do I get to be mentored by them, but I get to volunteer with them. And I've been lucky enough in my journey to become friends with most of them. who gets to say that? So volunteering, like, yes, it is a sacrifice because, you're putting your time and stuff, into it, and you have to balance because, of course, you have to keep your business running and do all of those things. But at the same time, I think everybody who volunteers, like, we learn something new every time, whether it's a new topic that comes up, whether it's a new way to do something. I mean, when we were on certification, we would spend days and hours where we would just do show and tell because we had people from all over the globe. And it was amazing to me, like, just even the different terminology, like the different tools. Like, I would say a certain tool and they would be like, what are you talking about? And I would be like, oh, let me go to my tool bag, and I'd grab it out and I'd be like, well, this tool. And they would be like, oh, well, we call that whatever. Or no, I've never seen that before. I mean, I've gotten German tools that I never would have gotten here in the United States because someone recommended it to me from someplace else, and they make my job a lot easier. So I think that you get so much more out of it than what you put in. And so I would say do it. Start it on a small scale to begin with. Working groups, there's going to be some new development in some of the working groups. Those are probably a little bit smaller time commitment. Sometimes once you start getting up to some of the committees and even like getting into the boardroom, there's more of a time commitment, and more things like that can be more difficult to like kind of jump in with 2 feet. But doing even just small things, I mean, doing things locally, helping, you out, Paul, like, working and sharing your perspective, in a class or, at a tech summit or, something like that. Your stories of your successes, but also your stories of your failures are going to help somebody else to be able to grow. And so even being willing to like share your story and volunteer that way, is a huge thing, I think.
So I'm wondering from a global perspective. Obviously, we spoke a little bit before too. There is a global board. There are integrators from all around the world. At the moment, there's no one from Australia and New Zealand, which, we did just have Stefan there from Liquid, but we do have James Chen. Yeah. So I'm wondering, overseeing the board representing thousands of members in, I believe, about 80 countries, how do some of the smaller countries, like not even Australia, we've got a couple hundred members, but if I then go to New Zealand where there's fewer, but then we have, I think it's 2 or 3 in Kenya or 2 or 3 in Nigeria. Yeah. How can they get involved to make sure their voice is heard and then to I guess, build CEDIA and the industry in their local market?
Yeah. That's a really great question. So I would say, a couple things. First is be willing to kind of like put yourself out there, reach out, anyone that's, interested. If you feel like, hey, I've done it before and I haven't gotten connected with, or I haven't gotten connected in, like I said, I will give my email, to everybody. Please, I will find you a spot. I promise. I will find you a way to connect. I promise you that. But even, I think COVID kind of like really changed us, where we're starting to see more things, with, webinars or podcasts or, things like that. So if you're in one of those, smaller countries like Kenya or, Belgium or, something like that, like, let's put something together. Let's work with CEDIA and, maybe we get someone either there to go, like teach something, or maybe it's like an online webinar. I mean, my first one that I did with Latin America, it was phenomenal. I mean, I understand Spanish. I took 6 years of it, so I'm functional in Spanish. I worked with Patty Manning because when I did that, a thing, we did have a translator there, but I was bound and determined that I was going to, give them my introduction of who I was in Spanish. I'm sure I butchered it, so my apologies right off the bat. But, just asking and saying like, hey, is there a resource? Is there a way that I could give input? Surveys, when we go out and we do out the surveys, I know Matt Nimmons has been phenomenal about doing that. The more surveys that we get from more areas, the more, you're going to be represented. And, the more perspective. You look at like, what Manoj and Sanket, Manoj is, on the board, from India, and what Sanket has been doing, to grow things in India. And they're just on this, crazy, excited, hyper train for saying, what can we do and how can we be involved? And I think you're really starting to see the growth there. It's easy to sit back, I think, and say, well, they're not doing anything for me, or CEDIA is not doing anything for me, so therefore, whatever. I'm just write it off. We're not perfect. We're in 80 countries. Unfortunately, we're not in every single language. There's budgets. There's, things like that. So there are going to be some constraints. But you know what? Anything that we can do, or any opportunity that we can have, we always have to look at those glimmers of hope and that positivity and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we can't do everything that we'd like to do in a certain country. But what can we do? What are the possibilities? And I think that if we keep doing that, we will definitely grow. We'll definitely be in other areas. And it's going to take some people that say, I have a passion for this and I'm willing to, kind of put in the work. I look at what you're doing in Australia, Paul. I mean, that's why you're my go-to. I call you and I talk to you all the time. What you've done to create a community there, it makes me excited. It makes me feel like sometimes I'm even sitting on the back of my laurels, because I'm like, oh my gosh, Paul's still running circles around me, and, he's checking in with people and stuff like that. But if you weren't taking it by the, the bull by the horns, that wouldn't happen. So we need people that are willing to, get involved, take that first step, and that we can kind of partner and come alongside with,
And what about to the people who are, I guess, naturally skeptical? There are people who are very skeptical of organisations like CEDIA, government organisations as well. It's innate. How do we work with them, and what could CEDIA potentially do to allay some of their concerns?
I think right off the bat, the first thing that I just said a second ago is understand that if you're going to hold us to a bar of thinking that we're going to be perfect or perfection, we're always going to fail you. We're human, we're fallible. I mean, even myself, there are probably some people that are out there that have listened to this or see me in this position, and they might think I might have done something inadvertently. They think I'm a jerk, or they think I'm, not a nice person or whatever. I genuinely hope that that's not the case. But I also know, I'm not perfect. CEDIA is like a family. There are some days my family loves me, and there are some days my family needs to have its separation and have its moment, away from me. And I think that that's the lens that we have to look at it through. We are a family here. We are a community, and there are going to be times that, maybe you called somebody and they forgot to call you back, or, maybe you tried signing up for something and inadvertently or accidentally you fell through the cracks on something. Understand that people have the best intentions. I mean, Wendy is out there. She wants to make sure everyone is successful. You have Jen McGuire in membership. She wants people to be successful, and wants to do everything she can. I mean, Amanda Cannon is does amazing, work. She's been around for forever. Jody Larson knows everybody under the sun, Rachel Nash is now the new volunteer care coordinator. I don't know if you know that, but her whole entire job role is basically to make sure that volunteers are connected with and that people are plugged into different areas. And, I had the pleasure of, getting to work with her when I helped curate education for Expo this last year. And, these people, they have a heart for it. They really want to see CEDIA members be successful. They really want to do everything that it takes. Daryl wouldn't have taken this job and done with it what he's done if he was just I just want to do a job. I mean, for Pete's sakes, in his first week of coming on to CEDIA, he came out in the field with me and did a whole field day, out with me, pulling wire, doing all the stuff, getting dirty. I mean, I picked him up in a van, from his hotel where it was at. It was nothing fancy. I promise you that. It was a regular work day, because I wanted him to see the perspective. But also, like I said, give us a little bit of grace. Understand that we're not going to be perfect. If you're going to hold us to a bar of perfection, we're always going to fail. I will fail. Everyone else will fail. But if you say, you know what? Ultimately, this organization is a family, and being part of a family is more important than not being part of the family, to be able to have a community. We want to get you involved. We want to get you, to do better, to be better, to have that community, to have that support. Some of my best friends, in the entire world, like how lucky am I that I have friends all over the globe. Like you can't find almost a country, in the globe that I don't know somebody through CEDIA or, have a connection to. How lucky am I? That's not supposed to happen for someone from Midwest United States, like it does for me. And so being part of that family and that community is just, it's worth it. It's worth it to me. It won't be perfect, but it's worth it. So that's what I would say.
So what is driving you? I mean, you've built a business that's been quite successful. You now got onto the board of CEDIA. You're the chairperson of the board of CEDIA. You've really hit the ground running in the 17 days that you've been in the role. Yeah. What is actually driving you?
For me, I'm a family-owned business. My son and my daughter will probably be involved in the business in some sort of capacity. And so it's two things. It's one, it's doing what I can to help make the next generation as successful as possible, number one. And number two, like I said, this industry is still fairly young. The story of this industry is still being written. And I always tell people, if I look at it as like a tapestry, right? The tapestry of this story of this industry is being woven together right now. And if I have the opportunity to be just one thread in that tapestry along with all these other amazing people, to me, that's worth it. That's what gets me up. You get involved in this industry and you volunteer. And if you're crazy like me and you have your birthday on your Facebook page, like I can't tell you, like from midnight in Australia, how many hours different are you? Like I start getting birthday messages, like literally from across the globe, like name another job or name another thing out there that you could do that happens. Like my family back, like I said, I'm Midwest Michigan. My family back here, they laugh. My mom is like, she'll look up and, it's my birthday. And of course she gives me my birthday message when it's, the morning or whatever for her. But she gets on and she's like, well, I want to be the first to tell you happy birthday. And I'm like, Mom, like I know people all over the globe. And she's like, who are all of these people? Like you can't possibly know all of these people because where I'm from and where I come from, like it was a bubble, like we're in a small kind of like community. Like a lot of people don't get to travel the way that I get to travel and get to know the other people and get to know the different cultures and have friends in other parts of the world. And how lucky are we that our industry allows us to be able to do that? I mean, when you get certification from CEDIA, it's ANSI and ISO accredited. Shoot, you can travel. Like you could get certified in Australia, get your work visa, come over here and work for an integrator in the United States or go work, up in the UK or, wherever it is. Like that's pretty flippin' cool, that you have that. So I think that's the two things, right? Preparing for the next generation and then just having the opportunity to be part of the story with so many amazing people, is awesome. It's humbling.
So I guess to wrap everything up then, if someone listening to this podcast and they're motivated but they don't know what they're motivated about, what is one thing that you actually hope that they take away from this conversation? The one thing that you hope that they would just, once they reach their office, if they're listening to this in their car, they sit down and go, okay, I'm going to do this and this is going to help me take that next step in my career.
I would say find one thing. And if you don't find it immediately, try different avenues. Like I said, people are, infallible, like they will make mistakes. Find one person that you can connect to. I mean, Paul in Australia, like I know that you're dedicated to like connecting people. And if you don't have a spot for something immediately right now in Australia, or someone wants to be like me and look more bigger or global, like you have a way to be able to connect them with someone so that they can, be bigger picture. I think listen to these podcasts, just stay in the loop, stay a little bit outside of just yourself and your company, in your little bubble. Do that. Like, just make one friend this next year in the industry that is not in your backyard. Make one new friend, whether it's you go to ISE and you attend a class and you get to know somebody in one of those classes. If you volunteer on something, if you reach out to someone on that's on a podcast, make one new friend that's not in your backyard, and then just watch that first domino is going to fall, and it's going to change your life.
So I guess moving forward, if there is someone listening who wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So the best way is my CEDIA email, and it's a really easy one to remember because it's first letter of your first name. So A for Amanda, A, and my last name is Wildman, exactly how it sounds. So there's officially a wildman@cedia.org. So that is my email, just awildman@cedia.org, and feel free, reach out. I would love to, get to know you. I would love to connect. I'm so looking forward to, if I can get this Australia thing worked out where I can come visit you guys. Start thinking now, because I really want a nickname. I've been told that you get a nickname when you come over there to Australia. I kind of want to know maybe you all have a bad nickname for me right now. But that is one thing I am most looking forward to, is to have my Australian nickname. But yeah, feel free, reach out. If you see me at ISE or, another event or whatever, please stop me, introduce yourself. And yeah, I owe this to all of you guys. And, I'm looking forward to it. It's an honor. It's humbling. And I hope that I represent all of you guys really well.
And if we do come up with a bad nickname, we'll just say it with a smile and just let you know it's a cultural thing. It's fine.
Perfect. I wouldn't know any different anyhow.
In fact, let's launch a competition. Best nickname.
Yes.
Win a prize.
Best nickname. Yes. We'll come up with a prize. We'll come up with a prize, Paul, that you can put out there. And best nickname for me. That would be great. For the chair position, that would be awesome.
That's it. And we will present it when you are in the country.
Fantastic. That would be
another reason to get here.
There you go. Put me to work. Free labor. You're going to get free labor if I come visit your place, and win a prize for the best nickname.
Done. Sounds good.
Perfect. You got to have fun.
A huge thanks to Amanda for her honesty and taking the time to outline her plans for the future of the Industries Association. If there's one thing that stands out from this conversation, it's that leadership in this industry isn't about titles. It's about service. Amanda's story is a reminder that none of us got here alone. We learn because someone teaches us, and we grow because someone gave us space. And industries move forward because people are willing to volunteer their time, experience, and voice. Education, certification, and workforce development don't happen by accident. They happen because people step up, often quietly, and commit to something bigger than their own business. If you're listening and wondering whether there's a place for you to get involved, there is. Sometimes all it takes is reaching out, asking a question, and saying yes to a small opportunity. If this interests you, get in touch. I'm always looking for assistance from the industry. Thank you also to the partners who support Master Integrator and the industry: ADI Global, Amber Technology, Coliseum, Connected Magazine, and CEDIA. If you'd like to get in touch, email me at info@masterintegrator.com.au or find me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening to Master Integrator. I'm Paul Skelton. I'll see you next time. Hi folks, Paul here, just with a quick update. The response so far to the podcast has been overwhelming, and as a result, Master Integrator is growing. So now we're inviting the global community to help shape what comes next. What began in Australia is evolving into a shared editorial podcast platform, built around real voices from real markets. As a result, we're now looking for volunteer co-hosts outside of Australia, including those based in Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Europe, and Canada. Wherever the smart home technology industry is growing and needs a platform to tell its stories. Now, this isn't necessarily about building a personal profile. It's about representing your local community, sharing practical, lived experience, and helping connect integrators across borders. If you care about the future of this industry and want to contribute, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at info@masterintegrator.com.au. Thanks again for your support.